I'm standing here, though, ready to tell you a story of paradox, of chaos, of creative destruction, and of democracy being reborn. And I stand here with, again, a shaking heart, because it's a story that is individual, but is also collective. And it's a nation's story. And it's like a new act of diplomacy to be here and to speak to you. So what is the paradox? And what is paradox? Paradox is when opposites come into relationship. And when those opposites come into relationship, they create a dynamic, a field, which creates new possibilities. This amazing instrument that we heard earlier has that kind of dynamic, which allows that beautiful music to come through. The paradox we are living in Greece is that in the deconstruction of our nation, we are living new wholeness. In the fragmentation that we are feeling, we are reaching new unity. This is paradox, dancing together. And what I'd like to do, because my tale is very, very complex, I'd like to give you a map to follow it with me. On the one hand, it's two continuums. On the one hand is my individual story, which I want to give you a little bit, and how that was mirrored in the collective of my nation. And on the other side, the other continuum, is the zoom out of the visible, of what you've seen, what your media has given to you. And then I want to take you into the undergrowth of the invisible. I want to zoom in to the small scale, which is where I am experiencing the real transformation at a systemic level in my country. So let me start with my individual. As you can hear from my accent, I am not a Greek from Greece. I'm a Greek from abroad. I was born in Africa, I grew up in Asia, North America, and I lived 18 years in the United Kingdom and kept my American accent. I think that's an achievement. But like many Greeks that live abroad, inside us we have this longing. And the longing in Greek is called kaimos. It is like a longing to return to this land that we come from. And I am a diaspora Greek. My parents lived in Egypt. My grandparents lived there. My other grandparents were from Asia Minor, present-day Turkey. But that longing is in our blood, and it calls us home. And for me, it was the Aegean Sea. In 2006, my father fell really ill, and we could feel, my sisters and I, that his time of life was coming to a close. And being with one's parents in the closure is sacred. So that was the catalyst that took me home, took me back to Ελλάδα, to Greece. And I found myself making home, because I have to have a lot of challenge. That's the kind of person I am. I found myself making home on this beautiful farm, 24 acres in the Pilion region, which is one of our beautiful regions. And my whole lifestyle changed. I lived with no electricity, water from a well, a house that didn't have very good insulation. I was olive farming. I don't come from a farming family. I really took myself to a place of complete and utter systemic change for myself. But one of the things that I had done in my career is that I had learned participation, and that is what I do. I work with participative leadership. How do we work with these questions and challenges that we have created for ourselves, as we've heard other speakers speak? How the hell do we get out of them? But how do we do it collaboratively? And how do we do it through one of our basic human capacities, which is conversation. So there I was, my olive farm, supporting my father to close his life. And then I realized that something was still not right. And I realized that I had shifted my whole life from the United Kingdom, and I was still living with a certain illusion. I still wasn't fully participating. So from this individual, I now want to call you to the collective of my nation. 2009, we had a new government come in, Papandreou. 2010, we started to feel the shock waves. We went from being the birthplace of democracy to being the enfant terrible of Europe. We were corrupt, we should be punished. And we began to see in the collective, and you probably saw it on your media, all the things that happened. The protests, the gassing, the unemployment, the massive rise in unemployment, the homelessness, the suicides. All the things that elicit tremendous fear in us Western people who like the certainty, who believe in our governments, who even believe that we have democratic governments. We really were the mirror to the rest of Europe of what happens when you don't keep in line. So that was the visible that was out there. And now I want to take you on the journey of the underground. I want to bring you a little bit into the wild soul of the Hellene, because that is what I am seeing rise up in Greece. And you can hear it in my voice. It comes from a deep place. One of the aspects of the Hellenes is resilience. One of the aspects of every human being is resilience. I want to tell you one story of resilience. A few months ago, our government, undemocratically, closed our national radio and TV station. It's called ERT. Perhaps it was in your news. It sent shockwaves across our country because, again, the illusion of living in a democracy came right into our face. No, we live in a democratic deficit. The radio station and TV station was closed, but the resilience awoke. Do you know what the workers did? They kept going there. They kept going back. They kept broadcasting. The government closed the actual airwaves. They did it through the internet. ERT has sub-offices in different parts of Greece. These people worked with no pay. They continued their art. They continued to share with us what was going on. It was the only news that you kind of could hear something other than the story and the narrative that we wanted to be told. 10 days ago, when the Troika was visiting for the next bailout, the government sent in the riot police into ERT at 4 a.m. in the morning. There were 50 staff in the offices, and they were there on shifts to make sure that there was no theft of the very expensive equipment. They were evicted by the riot police. The last words spoken over the airwaves was "Vathia psychi," deep soul, which means keep the courage. The resilience of these people didn't go away. That day, they set up a table outside the chained gates of the ERT broadcasting, and they broadcasted. That's resilience, folks. The second thing that we're really seeing in Greece, which comes from our wild soul, is solidarity. When you come from a nation that has had different people rule you, you learn a form of network, community, and solidarity that knits you together in a social fabric. We had kind of lost that since the 90s with all those EU grants that had ended up in pockets of a few. And it's come back. And so our society is living at the moment due to this solidarity. The creative destruction that also was spoken in the loop this morning, as we started, that creative release at the bottom, and I really want you guys to hear this, is not of the Greek people. It is of the institutions. It is of the governmental practices. That is what is destructing. And personally, although it might make you feel scary, when you have lived with a political crisis, not an economic crisis, and with poor political leadership held in elitism by the few, it's actually a really good thing to be released. It's time. So how is our state continuing? It's called civil society, both organized through nonprofits and self-organized through just basic citizen action. And you are seeing this spread throughout the country. Our complementary currency systems is an answer to people not being able to have enough money to deal with their basic needs. There are new kind of nonprofits such as Borume, which means we can, which are actually taking food from restaurants and other things like the airlines, Aegean Airlines, etc., and distributing it to people in need. You have really basic urban social projects that are being created that are either through urban gardening or through art and kind of the theater, music emerging. And you're really seeing this solidarity knitting us back together. The third piece, which I want to focus on for the remaining bit, because we're talking about life cycles today. I don't know if I'm going to see it in my lifetime, but I am seeing and experiencing as a Greek citizen a full circle coming. I've realized that this longing that's been in my blood and in my DNA hooks back to the ancestry of this land. And this is the third really core element of our Greek wild soul. And it links to the story that I was telling you about participation and what I've been doing. In Greek, it's called demokratia, democracy. Participation is the foundation of democracy. Taking part, being responsible, feeling commitment and care for the next generations that will follow. Democracy is not an X every 4 or 5 years next to some politician's name or political party. Democracy is not partisan politics. And democracy, sure as hell, is not austerity measures that is squeezing the life out of people. That is not democracy. So what I'm seeing in Greece, and what gives me the greatest hope, is I am seeing democracy being reborn. And it is not coming from political parties. It is not coming from elections. It's coming from polites, which means citizens. In Greek, the word polis means city, politis means citizen, Politikos means somebody that serves the city, which is politician. And politia means state. They all come from the same root in the Greek language. So what I'm seeing is citizens taking their role of participation. And I am seeing new leaders, participative leaders, who are not there to tell people what to do or take for themselves, but are creating those conditions where people can come together. And I personally am involved in one particular initiative, which is really calling out, one, that we don't have democracy in Greece at the moment. We don't also feel that there is democracy in much of the Western world. That word has been taken and used differently. But in Greece specifically, we have, when you examine it, and it goes to the legal element, we have quite an undemocratic constitution. So we are calling an initiative which is called Politia 2.0, which means society or state 2.0. And one of the actions, there are 3 elements to it. One of it is to actually call a constitutional process. Now you might think, who the hell are you to call this? We are citizens. We have every right. Because we want to leave a better world for our kids and for their kids. And so we're starting this process, and next to the constitutional process, we're also working with culture and philosophy, because it's very core to participation. And the third is also really trying to bring in a new political science, a new form of politics, a new form of living as citizens. So I wanted to share some of that with you, because I think what you guys are often, you see about Greece is the doom and the gloom, the poverty. It's not poverty, folks. It's a seedbed for societal innovation. It's actually the hand-making of what we really want for ourselves. And I do believe that it is going to spread. And the certainty that we seek is not going to continue. It is learning to live with the chaos. It is learning to live with the unpredictability. But it's absolutely okay if you participate in it. And I think I want to end with a quote from Odysseas Elitis, who is one of our modern poets from the 20th century, who said, if you deconstruct Greece, there will be 3 things: the olive tree, the vine, and the boat. From the olive tree, we will live with our olives and our oil. From the vine, we will drink our wine. And with the boat, we'll fish what's left of the fish in the sea if we haven't destroyed it all. But from those 3 things, we can reconstruct Greece. And I think we're going to do it. In the Netherlands, what would happen if it was deconstructed? What would you be left with? I leave that for yourselves to think about. Thank you very much. You want me?